This is the Moon Tower Podcast with your host, Ian Hubbard. Alrighty, folks. Episode 8, Moon Tower Podcast, the Halloween special. It's our holiday Halloween special. It's Halloween night. Do you know where your children are at?
Where's my son?
I sure as hell don't. I don't know where any kids at. Hope you folks enjoyed your trick-or-treating and your horror movies and your scary, spooky stuff and all that good shiznit. I have to say, I was been lacking this month. A lot of people were doing the Sober October fitness challenge and all that stuff, and a lot of people were trying to catch up on their horror movie watching, and I did neither.
I was doing the Wasted Wednesday, and that ended up lasting for like a month and a half. So
that tends to happen regardless. But no, I did have a few classic like scary movies I wanted to revisit, like the original Hitcher with Rutger Hauer and whatnot, and a couple other ones, and I just didn't get around to it. I did watch a couple nights ago. I watched Neon Demon, the Nicholas Refn film about the fashion industry. It's supposed to be like a fairy tale horror movie, and if anyone caught my Facebook post, they'll know what I thought of it, which is a complete piece of shit. There's really nothing redeemable about that movie. Nothing really at all. There wasn't a good shot. There wasn't a good composition. The score was... the acting, the dialogue, everything about it was doo-doo butter.
I shall be sure to avoid that one, so I have not watched it.
Do yourself a favor. Don't waste 2 hours on it. Unless you want to learn how not to make a movie. If you want to sit down and take some notes on that, go for it.
I've watched enough Uwe to know how not to make a movie. So
well, the worst part about Neon Demon was that a lot of people were like really freaked out about it, and it's so over the top and gratuitous violence, and it's got like cannibalism and necrophilia and lesbianism and bloodshed and this, that, and the other, and it's tame. So absolutely unbearably tame, where you would think it's like some like gore-tastic, like if it would have been like really over the top, like the classic like giallo, like Italian bloodbath slasher films.
Oh yeah.
Then yeah, I would have excused the poor attempt at artistic filmmaking that Refn is quite known for, in my opinion. But it has nothing of that, and it's the worst part about it is when I got done, it was so overwhelmingly meh. The worst reaction that you can get from a film of any sort is you're indifferent to it at the end of it.
Yeah.
You know, instead of being like, oh, what the fuck was that?
I mean, at least if it's like absolutely terrible and something, at least you can like feel something towards that way. If it's just like really not like fetching like anything, regardless of what it's trying to do, then you know you got a problem.
Yeah, that's the absolute worst reaction you can get, is indifference. Where instead of like outrage or awe or somewhere in the middle where it's just like kind of like what the hell just happened? Like, whoa, where you have to sit back and like digest it and figure out like what the hell just
it's like a movie you don't even like feel like analyzing after the fact. It's like, oh, that was something.
Well, I analyzed it, and the only analysis I came up with was like, how would I have done things differently? Like, I know I could have, at least I feel I could have made a better film with the material, and it was just meh. Like even I would say like the last bad horror movie I watched, like that was just bad. Probably like the sequel to The Ring, which I saw that when it came out in the theater. I saw both of them in the theater, unfortunately. The first one, when it came out, wasn't too bad. It doesn't have any, like, decent replay effect, but the second one was just mas terrible. It was horrible. But at the same time, I came out of it and, like, ranting and raving, like, it's just like, this, they did this wrong. With Neon Demon, I was just like, well, that was that. So, and two, like, I really want to give Nicholas Refn, like, the chance to have some sort of effect as a good filmmaker. And a lot of people think he's like the cat's ass, which I don't understand. I don't understand that. But this was the last straw. Like, I'm officially done with it, because it was a poor attempt at a film of any sort, let alone a horror film. But keeping in line with that, like that sort of like outrageous moments in movies, especially horror movies, you know, keeping in line with the season, the holiday. I saw it was like a Facebook thread, like horror movie or horror movie moment that you can't, that you have a hard time rewatching. And I posted the one that I had from, I think it was last week or the week before, talking about the scene in The Fly. Gina Davis is she's dreaming about giving birth and whatnot. Another one that I saw that was pretty popular was, and it's a classic for sure. The film itself is a little odd, but the moment itself is in Zombie, the Lucio Fulci take on, I think it was Dawn of the Dead or Night of the Living Dead, whichever one, where the zombie breaks through the piece of wood, grabs a woman's head, and like brings her eye to this eye splinter scene.
Oh, yeah.
I think I might have mentioned this. I don't know. My brain has a lot of holes in between episodes, so if I sound like a broken record, please comment, folks. Give us some feedback. But
Moon Tower Podcast does not condone the use of PCP.
No. CPC. CDC. That's different.
Yep.
But, yeah, I can't really think of, there's a few others. Yeah, there's a few others that kind of escape my mind at this point. I did see another one. It was, very interesting, kind of an interesting one. Best horror movie performances by lead. It had I think it was from Ranker or Collider, one of those like pop culture sites. Once again, it's on Facebook. Thank you, Zuck. And it had like a lot of some of the standards, like, you know, Jack in The Shining, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Another one was George C. Scott in Changeling. Can't fucking pronounce it. Changeling. I don't know. I can't pronounce it right now. But one of the ones that it did feature, which is one of my favorite performances on film, regardless of the genre, era, whatever, especially in a horror film, and it's it really is like one of the OG horror movie performances, is Boris Karloff in Frankenstein, the James Whale Frankenstein from 1932, I think 31 or 32. Terrific, absolutely terrific performance from Karloff. Just being able to bring out some sort of humanity within this monster that was created. And the thing that's sort of touching and about it for me is that he's completely vulnerable. One of the great things about Karloff's performance for me is he's completely vulnerable because he has absolutely no control over himself and his actions, his reactions. He obviously has no ability to interact because, like, he's essentially a child. And for me, the way he plays it is like a newborn baby who's brought into this world, and he has no idea what's going on. He has no idea of his surroundings, of himself, of anything that's happening. And because of his reactions with his because the brain that he's given is a criminal, I think it was a murderer, that's his reaction is violence and aggression and anger and whatnot. But he doesn't have any control of it. In a way, it's kind of a sort of a touching analogy about the whole idea of free will versus, like it's kind of like the predisposition of a being to act or react a certain way. And it's like the scene, the immortal scene where after he escapes and he's throwing daisies into the pond with the little girl, and he runs out of daisies to throw, and he's like looking at his hands, like shuffling his hands, like he's got this whole thing, like what do I do next? And he looks at the girl and he scoops her up and just like, oh, this'll, and he just tosses her in the pond, and she's flopping around like screaming for help and drowning, and he's just and just walks away. Like it's just the I don't know, it's just something about his stuff like that about his performance is so very human in a way, because and he's not even a monster. Like that's the thing I think people kind of get wrong about Frankenstein, the Frankenstein monster, is that he's not a monster. He's turned into one because he's inherited this criminal mindset to where his action and reaction is observed as, violent and horrific and whatnot, but is completely out of his control. And then when the lynch mob show up to kill the monster, and there's something, especially at the end, where he's in the barn tower, oh shit, I can't fucking, what's the name? You've seen it, right? Windmill. Thank you. Windmill. And, they got their torches and they're lighting on fire, and he's screaming, he's running around trying to figure out, like, what the hell's going on, literally like a small child or a animal, like, trapped in a cage. For me, it's just like, like, honestly, it's like one of the only times I root for the quote-unquote bad guy in a movie, because, like, a lot of the times, like, you see, like Dracula. Dracula knows what he's doing. He knows what he's about. He's a fucking menace. And Bela Lugosi, once again, great performance. Completely owns it. But Dracula, for instance, like, knows what he's about, knows what he's doing. Whereas Frankenstein is just like, in spite of my rage, I'm just rat in a cage.
Yeah.
And when he's screaming for his life and he just doesn't, and then it collapses on him, and you're just like, it's one of those characters that you kind of, for me, you feel for it, like, because he's doomed from the beginning. He really is. Like, like I say, he's got no control over anything about himself, except he can only instinctually react. And the thing that Karloff does so beautifully for me is he pinpoints that to a fucking T. Like, it's all reaction, and then just I off the top of my head, I can't recall who did the makeup for it. Spot on. Like the dead eyes, just the gaunt look, just the way he moves, like he's like almost surprised by every step that he takes and every movement, and then he gets a hold of himself, and then he's forced into this corner where he just has to react, and the only reaction he can have is violence because that's what's thrown at him. It's just, I'm so very kind of happy that showed up on that list, because for me, like I said, it's such a great performance, and he's obviously no lines of dialogue. It's just like murmurs and like, it's just the absolute like minimal, primal, animalistic like grunts and grinds, and just such. And the film itself, like the way James Whale directed it, just small bits of silence. I don't think there's no score to it. I think when it was released, it had an orchestral score. I think, which like the orchestral scores, that's the way they used to do silent films when they were released. They'd have them in the theater and have a live orchestra, not like a big like Philharmonic orchestra. They'd, sometimes they'd have like an organ, just a big organ, which I think the museum did one. They always show Nosferatu, the original 1922
yeah,
Nosferatu.
that'd be a good one to see that with.
F.W. Murnau's Nosferatu, Max Schreck. They show that in the peristyle, and they have an organist playing along, like with the original live score that they have, which is the way it was when it was released. That's the way they did that. But that's a little tidbit on that. Which is funny. When I saw that and mentioned that Karloff's Frankenstein, I went as that type of Frankenstein character. 1 year for Halloween, I think it was 11 or 12, and then the next year I went as Dracula. But I wanted to try to get like the traditional, like the old style, not like De Niro's Frankenstein. Which, you ever seen that one?
I haven't.
Kenneth Branagh, the guy that the actor he did what was it? It was either Hamlet. I think it was Hamlet. Yeah, it was Hamlet. Excuse me. Was it Hamlet or Henry VIII? He did one and Mel Gibson did the other. I can't remember which one. But he directed, I think, the first Thor film. He directed a couple others. Pretty well-known actor. Some of those roles escaped me. Apologies. He directed, I think he came out in the mid-90s. De Niro plays the Frankenstein monster. It's more it's more faithful to the book. Mary Shelley's book.
Mm-hmm.
It's very melodramatic, and obviously you have to get over the fact that Robert De Niro plays fucking Frankenstein.
Yeah, no, that just doesn't seem like
which he once again he brings out a decent amount of the humanity in it, and it does do a decent job at bringing the monster alive, and then kind of switching the roles to where the monster, he has to go in hiding, he has to find his humanity, which happens in the book, and then you come to realize that Victor Frankenstein is the actual monster. The scientist is really the one who is, in the humanist term, is the monster.
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Victor Frankenstein, the immortal Gene Wilder from Young Frankenstein, which is quite possibly the greatest parody movie ever, let alone one of the great comedies. And Marty Feldman as Igor, you can't beat that. You can't beat that at all.
It's good.
It's more than good. It's more. It's yeah. I posted real quick. I posted the other day that John Goodman should have won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor for Big Lebowski. I really think Marty Feldman should have won one as well for Young Frankenstein. But unfortunately, funny that we said De Niro, he won that year for Godfather 2. So I can't really get mad at that.
Yeah.
But
no, I have a question for you actually. If someone were to do Frankenstein nowadays, who would you have playing?
The scientist or the monster?
Monster.
Now?
Yeah, I guess you say Frankenstein's monster.
Frankenstein's monster now? Oh.
Be correct here.
Oh, man. Shit.
For me, I'd have to say, Javier Bardem. I think he could do an okay job.
See, I would see him more as... the professor.
Okay.
Because I think you would have to get someone with, a broad build, some sort of stature. I can see someone and this is probably a stretch, but this guy's kind of popped in my mind when it comes to roles like that. Because I've thought of I think of this guy, this actor, doing like a role like that where he has no dialogue, because I think he has a very expressive face.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not to say that he can't be a good actor, but from what little I've seen, he has that kind of maturation point where I think if he reaches it, he can be able to pull something off.
Yeah, yeah.
Is Henry Cavill, the guy that's
Okay.
been playing Superman.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think he's got something like that where I think he can do a lot with no dialogue.
Yeah, yeah.
I think he can. Obviously, the only things I've seen him, I haven't seen the new Mission Impossible where he plays one of the bad guys, I think. I've seen The Immortals, which kind of broke him out, and then I've seen bits and pieces of him in Superman. But I don't know, something about him doing something like that, a role like Frankenstein's a monster. But then you got guys like Ray Fiennes, who I think could pull it off. Once again, I can see him more as Victor Frankenstein. That's a good question. Fuck.
Yeah, I like Bardem just because, like, he's got, like, that dead face, like, expression, like, by default.
He's got the cheekbones and the jawline.
Yeah, and he's good at, like, acting without having to say a whole lot.
No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, yeah, like, I use that as an example, but, like, it's a good example. Yeah.
Don't quote me on it. I think I read somewhere where he kind of modeled early. I don't know if Cormac McCarthy modeled Anton Chigurh after something like a Frankenstein monster, or Bardem modeled kind of his performance.
Because, like, his whole thing is just, like, an unstoppable force, and that's kind of like, yeah, like the way I see it.
Well, and even then, like, for me, like, that was the great thing about Karloff's performance as Frankenstein, is that, you know, it's kind of, you know, in the lore of it, is thought of like this unstoppable force that that the village has to rise up against. And for me, it's the complete opposite.
Okay.
Complete opposite. Where it's a being that was literally created from the dirt. You know, they dug up the body and put the brain in him and electrocuted him to life. And he's got like this mammalian brain, this primate brain, reptilian, not mammalian, sort of brain where it's fight or flight, do or die, you know, and the only way he can react is what is like brought toward. Like, if you're in a very just absolute base frame of mind, there's literally A or B, there's no C option. And if someone comes at you threatening your life, there's only one way you're going to react. You know, for instance, which is the thing where, like I said before, the scene where he's at the pond throwing daisies in with, I think, little Maria, and she's, just throw him in, blah, blah, blah. And he runs out, and he's, for me, one of the great moments, and probably the best acting in that film from Karloff, is when he's like, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. He's shuffling his hands after he runs out of daisies. Like, he's looking at his hands like, what do I do? Okay, let's try this. And he picks her up and throws her in. And you're just like, for me, like, when I was a kid seeing that, you're just like, because you don't understand, you just see like this
like, whoa, what?
monster
doing
this. Yeah. Yeah, but like, the older I got, and the more I watch that, the more I realize I'm like, he doesn't know any better. And then it kind of like gets to a point where, like, when I see that part in that film, I'm like, no, man, because that's the point where, like, especially which is a great shot of the dad, like, carrying her lifeless body through the town square on the day of Victor Frankenstein's wedding, and they're having the celebration and whatnot, and he comes carrying her lifeless body with her arms swinging, because, with him stepping, and he goes up to the foot of the tower, or the house that they're at, and he's like, look what you did. Look who you created this. And then the lynch mob get together, and we got to stop this monster, and then it turned. There's that little. It's very simple, and just that little bit of that story arc where, Frankenstein's not a monster, but then through the public perception, he gets turned into one because he killed this little girl, essentially on accident. Because, like I said, he doesn't know any better.
Yeah.
So, and it kind of got framed as that, I guess in the promotion of it, like this unstoppable force, and it kind of became this kind of cliche like that, like Frankenstein's this evil thing that it can't be stopped, it can't be reasoned with, it can't be bargained with, blah blah blah. And then for me, it's complete opposite. It's literally like a small animal or a childlike mindset where you're faced with A or B and you know nothing else. And it's actually, in kind of a realistic sense, like the story of Frankenstein, at least from the monster standpoint, is pretty fucking sad. It really is. In a way, it's very tragic.
It's like brought into this world for, science, and just as quickly snuffed away.
Well, yeah, it was in a way, it's like he was created almost as a goof. Like Victor Frankenstein basically created the Frankenstein monsters to see if he could do it, to see if his whack ass scientific theories worked out, and it worked out. Just not in his favor, and definitely not in the monster's favor. But before we go any further with that, we have to take a moment, acknowledge the continuing onslaught that is America's favorite team, the HUAC Fighting Angry Goats. Once again, Nate Fitch, they came out on top with a 27-19 victory against the San Jose Bullsharks. It seems that the week layoff after the postponed match against the Albuquerque Armadillos did the offensive HUAC quite well, as they racked up nearly 500 yards of total offense on their way to a victory. Now, the scoreboard will say that the game was a lot closer than it was, but 2 late touchdowns by the San Jose Bullsharks, as well as 2 missed 2-point conversion attempts, did bring the game a little bit closer. All in all, it was a pretty well-handled game by the HUAC Fighting Angry Goats, as quarterback Jimmy Doppelganger once again led the team in total offense with nearly 350 yards to his own self, with 137 of those yards coming on the ground. Now, the Bullshark offense was able to find some weaknesses in the front 7 of the HUAC defense, with nearly 250 yards rushing for the game, but they were able to hold in the fourth quarter, as the Bullsharks had nearly 200 yards leading up to the fourth quarter. But mishaps and turnovers plagued the Bullsharks all game long. A tipped third down pass in the first quarter led to a missed field goal attempt by kicker Arnold Braunschweiger. 2 drop passes on first and second down stifled a promising drive in the third quarter. And an interception deep inside the Goat red zone late in the fourth quarter were the main difference for the Bullsharks. Once again, leading the way for the HUAC Fighting Angry Goats was Jimmy Doppelganger with 3 touchdown passes for the game and 1 running. Running back Who the Hell Is That had 135 yards rushing, and receiver Alex Murphy had 8 catches, 91 yards, and 1 of those touchdown receptions. The linebacking core for HUAC was busy all day, with all 3 starting linebackers recording a total of 47 tackles between the 3 of them. The defensive line did get pushed around, as once again San Jose was able to rush for nearly 250 yards and did jump out to his early 7-0 lead. Unlike past games for this season, we were able to get interviews with both head coaches, the first being Brett Stinkfester for the HUAC Fighting Angry Goats. He seems a little bit cocky in this bit, and we'll play it shortly. Coach, another big win. Got kind of close at the end, but you are still undefeated and you're moving on. What do you think? Well, we played good. That's all I can say. We played good. You got anything else to say about that? Your defense looked a little sluggish early on. Front seven got pushed around. Your defensive line didn't hold up too well, but thankfully the linebackers and whatnot, they were able to come through. Well, that's the game. It happens that way. We played good. That's all you have to say, Coach? Yes. That's all we have. Yes. That's all I have to say. Any thoughts on your upcoming opponent, Coach? No. No, not really. All right, Coach. Man, a few words, as always. Like we said, we were able to get an interview with San Jose head coach Logan McPhear, who was not too happy with the turnout of the game. Coach, tough loss. Leaves you at 4-4 on the season. You guys have had a lot of tough losses this season. Got any words to describe how you're feeling right now? Well, it'd help if we didn't, been playing like dog shit all fucking year. It doesn't help when we have turnovers, missed opportunities. Doesn't help when we let the quarterback run around like a chicken with his head cut off. I mean, what else can we say? What else can we do? We put the players in a good position. We coach them good all fucking week long during practice, and this is how they play, like utter dog. Coach, can you watch the language a little bit? Can you watch my players as they suck on the field? Out there looking like a bunch of JC jackoffs waving their dicks around. What else can I do? I can't go out there. I can't put on the shoulder pads. I can't put on the helmet. I wore 47 back in the day. No one else here does. You want me to do that again? I mean, I'll do it if I have to, but we aren't allowed by regulation and standards. Coach, what are you talking? What do you mean what I'm talking about? I can play linebacker, I can play free safety, defensive end, quarterback, kicker, punter, and the holder all together. That's what I do, that's what I did, that's what I does. Now, if you excuse me, I'm going to go home and go to bed to sleep this bull nightmare off because my team sucks. Wow, I really don't know what to say about that.
That was a harrowing speech if ever I heard one.
Quite spirited. Quite spirited. Well, some harsh words from the losing coach. Hopefully the Bullsharks can get it together and end the season strong. As for the HUAC Fighting Angry Goats, next week they are looking at the Jackson City Jackoffs. They are playing at home, so the home crowd will all be able to bring it out in support of the team. Another in-conference game as the Jackson City Jackoffs are also undefeated, so this is going to be big. This is going to be the biggest game of the year. The stadium's going to be rocking. We are expecting all of our local fans to be coming out for it. Can't wait to see you there. The Jackson City Jackoffs offer, once again, a full house kind of team. High-powered offense. Immovable defense. It's going to be good. It's going to be all good. Can't wait to see you there. This coming Saturday, let's go Goats.
Yeah.
And with that, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we'll come back with the Breath of the Moon Tower podcast, Episode 8, Halloween Style. This episode is brought to you by
Captain Spaulding's Roadside Attractions. Howdy, folks. You like blood, violence, freaks of nature? Well, come on down to
Wait. This... shit, man, you already told me... Oh.
I think they already did that.
Ow. Alright, let's do another one.
You like smoked meats? You like ground meats? You like meats of any kind? Well, come on down to Texas where we got...
That ain't gonna work either, is it?
No, shoot dang.
Oh, here we go. Oh, this will get him. All right. Salvia Cola, the natural sweetener for the fourth dimension. when you want to take a trip to the
It's brain looking good.
Ooh. Alrighty, folks, we're getting scared here in the last half of episode 8 of the Halloween edition of the Moon Tower Podcast. We're already shitting our pants in fear. The zombies are taking over. The aliens have landed. The government has our brains wiretapped. Nate, you alright?
Soylent Green is people.
Yes, they are. Alright, folks. I was thinking about looking up like some scary stories, some urban legends, some really spooky shit for you guys. So I figured I might as well just keep it down to earth, keep it real life. Nate, you had a really good idea. What was songs?
Yeah, I was
scary
thinking,
songs, spooky songs.
Songs and albums that really inflict that horror vibe.
Well, I always get the heebie-jeebies listening to Monster Mash.
Oh, doesn't everybody?
I kid. You can't go wrong with that song, man. You can't hate on that. Like, that's literally, like, fuck White Christmas. Monster Mash is, like, the holiday song of all time. Even though White Christmas, Bing Crosby.
Bing.
What would you pick? You got one on mine?
The entirety of the album Them and Abigail by King Diamond. Those are classic Halloween favorites of mine.
Okay.
I mean, throw that on for the kiddies when they're coming to get candy. They're guaranteed to get scared, if not by King's harrowing falsetto. It'll be Andrew LaRoque's vicious guitar work. So,
Oh, that's funny you said that. Let me give this story real quick. I think you'll like this. When I was like 14 or 15, I had my Kiss phase. And it was the first year I was handing out candy. I was sitting on the front porch. I had my brother do my makeup. I wanted it to look like Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
But instead of that, I had my brother do the makeup like black metal style, like Norwegian black metal, like Mayhem.
Yeah.
Dude from Mayhem. One of the dudes from Mayhem. They all look fucking the same to me. He did it up like the black eyes, the spikes, and the white face and shit. And I listened. I had Kiss Alive, both sides, and Destroyer. And I remember I had a plastic pumpkin candy bowl. I was like throwing it out to the kids and shit. And there's this one kid came up, and the house I grew up in, kind of a big blue front porch. Stairs, stone stairs, like 3 small stairs up the step away from the sidewalk. Little walkway, the yard, and then the wood stairs going up the porch. And I'm sitting there, and I got up thunder off of Destroyer. Like it has that pounding downbeat, like got up thunder. And that was I had that cranked up on my little stereo. Went up to 13, but it was one of those ones that was like the 3-digit stereo. So it was like you get like 13, volume 1, then 2, then 3. It was like the loudest.
Yeah.
I think it was Magnavox. It might have been Panavox or Magnavox, whatever the fuck brand it was. I had that shit cranked up, and my face was all painted up, and I was doing like the whole tongue thing, like like all Gene Simmons and shit. And the kid stopped, like looked at me, and was like, like, "Gotta thunder and rock and roll." Like this fucking cheesy ass Kiss music coming out, and they're like, I'm like, I got one.
I saw the devil today.
I kept it reals. No, it was, I think that was, that that time it was Kiss and Blue Oyster Cult. A little bit, because we had the tape. It was Blue Oyster Cult's greatest hits. So, you know, Don't Fear the Reaper, Godzilla, Burning for You, shit like that. We were also playing that because the stereo I had was a double. It was, you know, play cassette and CDs and shit on it. But that was the one time I had, I was able to actually scare some kids. I turned a couple away. It was I remember one kid, he was like dressed as an alien or whatever. He had like the pullover mask, like the big plastic face and shit. Stopped on the sidewalk, looked at me, looked at his mom, shook his head, and just kept walking. I was like, yeah. I was like, you know, like still being that age and being like, yeah, I'm scaring kids, like, because
yeah.
You get a few good Halloweens in and whatnot. You want to like actually see if you scare some kids and whatnot. You're still within that age reach where you can do that, and still you do that now, like when you're like close to 30, like you better come up with some good shit, or else you're just a creep. Unfortunately.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like I always feel it's like, okay, you're like trying to like rekindle that memory within yourself, like when you were that age and you like get mystified by Halloween. Like I remember like when I was like 8 years old going through this haunted house, and it was just like the most real thing ever to me. Like, man, this is like a really fucking good haunted house in Elmore, Ohio that I went to, and it's just like, you know, like blaring lights and stuff, and like all this like fucking horrific shit. Like there's this guy like fucking sawing this lady or whatever, and it's like, I don't know what was going on in my young mind at the time. It was great shit.
I mean, it's cool. Like, I mean, if you're in the spirit of it, if you're just doing it to be a dick, but like if you're in the spirit of it, yeah, it's awesome. Like, and not even just to go out like, I'm gonna fuck some kid's day up or whatever. And I never got into the whole haunted house thing. I did a cornfield in Wapakoneta, or no, it was Wapak. Which was funny because I had that same kind of makeup on. It was like a 3-4 year stretch where I would have my brother or somebody do that makeup for me. Just like make it like the evil fucking, you know. On the flip side of that, I have to admit this. I was in high school. I was in, I think, my sophomore year. This chick I was dating at the time, she lived in Delphus, which was about 15 miles away from where I lived in Lima. So I had my mom's boyfriend at the time drive me over, or her mom would drive her over for us to hang out. And that Halloween, I think it might have been, it was either the same year or the year after I first did the whole, like, black metal face and the Kiss get up and shit. Her and her friends were planning on going to, like, a haunted cornfield and shit. I'd never been to one. Like, I'd heard about, like, the haunted quarry and the haunted this and the haunted that and the haunted whatever. So I'm like, I decided to go over, and I'm still in the face paint and the get up and shit. So I show up like that, and I just remember her name was Allison. She like opens the door, let me in, and she just looks at me and goes, "Oh no!" And all her friends, like, they're not. I expected, like, you know, everyone's in the spirit, you know, the spirit of Halloween. Everyone's in costumes and makeup and whatnot. No, everyone's plain clothes, like civilian clothes and shit. And I'm just like sitting there with. What the fucking looking like one of the
hail,
like
kill, hail.
Yeah, like the fucking black metal fucking paint job on my face. I'm just sitting there like, oh hey guys, hey what's going on? And like trying to like crack jokes, and you know I'm evil man. Yeah, I was just like immediately out of place, just immediately embarrassingly like. And everyone's looking at me like, I'm like, it's fucking Halloween. Like, how old are you? 15? Whatever. I just remember we went to this haunted cornfield, and I was, So I was literally the biggest bitch at all of them. I was like, immediately we walk in, this guy dressed up like Michael Myers comes charging up at us, like walking like furiously, and I'm like, oh, oh. And we go in walk through this part of the cornfield, and there's shit jumping out at us, and I'm the one that's like, ah, ah. Like, it was just absolutely horribly embarrassing. Cause like, I'm like trying to, like, I'm looking all hard ass, but I'm acting all like, oh, oh, oh. I'm the one like screaming, like, we ended up in like the haunted house part where you had to like dig through the dirty toilet full of like wet leaves to find the key to get out of the door and shit. I remember my girlfriend at the time, she like pushed me aside. I was like, I got this. I'm like, ah, ah. I'm in the face paint and shit. I'm just like, what? And I just remember we walked out, like the whole time like, doing that shit. And we walked out, and she's like looking at me, like shaking her head, like so embarrassed. And her friends are just like looking at. I'm like, ooh, scary. All right, fuck off, man. Like, leave me alone. It was so fucking funny. I got one for you. Do you recall any bad dreams or like the worst dream that you've had? Like, scary, spooky wise?
Oh, probably the worst one I've had in a long while was I had a dream about me being in my bunk bed as a kid, but the bunk bed above me was like beehive.
The whole thing?
Yeah. Just bees everywhere.
How old were you?
Oh, this was within the last like 3 or 4 years.
Oh, shit.
Like, I was like, I don't know, like sleep dreaming. I was like in my bed as a kid, I guess.
Okay.
But yeah, like these bees weren't hurting me or anything, but there's like, you know,
They were there.
yeah, like everywhere. And I can't remember like what like, you know, the dream is supposed to symbolize or whatever. And whatever.
Do you have an aversion to bees? Did you have something? Not to turn this into a therapist session, but did you have anything happen to you when you were a kid?
Not me personally. My younger brother, more so than me. Like, when we were younger, I had a swing set, and bees decided to make a nest within, like, you know, like one of the swings or whatever. Like, it was like a toddler's, like, swing, or whatever you want to call that. They made, like, a bee's nest inside of that, and I put my younger brother in that, and it was like, you know, like, we're, like, you know, going back and forth on that, and like I didn't realize it until after I put him in there, and it's like, oh hey, there's all these bees in here.
I had one. I had one. This dream happened about probably, say about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was the last dream that I can recall, which I shot up out of deep sleep, and it was like damn near like sweats. I went to sleep perfectly fine. Like there wasn't anything traumatizing or anything nerve-wracking before I went to sleep, which from my understanding, like sometimes that'll happen. Like if something happens before you go to sleep, that'll definitely influence what you dream about. But I was walking down the side street from the house that I grew up in, going down to the gas station to carry out to get cigarettes or whatever. And I was walking back towards my house, which the street that I was on in the dream, I believe it was Metcalf Street, if you're in Lima. And then it would take about three streets and then take a right down Hazel, which is the street I grew up on. So I'm walking down Metcalf, and I'm walking past an old TV sales station. It was this building. It was called the Zenith TV station. All they sold was like TVs and VCRs and home entertainment shit, like the old cheap stuff.
Old CRTs and whatnot.
Yeah. Like the building looked like it hadn't been refurbished since the 70s, and I don't even know if it's still there. But I remember I'm walking past that, and it's late at night. And this is all in a dream. It's late at night, and it's got the lights of the street lights have that kind of like yellowish orange glow to it, and they're all open face lights, so it's shining straight down the street. And I'm walking, and behind me I hear the hum of the engine of a van, like that, like when you hear like a big van pull up behind you, and you hear that, like that hum of it. And I hear it getting closer and closer, and then I hear the sound of sliding doors, and they open immediately. And I turn back, and dudes just piling out both sides in all black hood, like just fucking ninja style, and they're chasing my ass. And I take off running for dear life, and that's the last. And it's all within succession, like, and I'm fucking bolting down the sidewalk. And then, as I turn down the sidewalk, that's when I, just jump. Like, literally, it happened probably like 3 years ago. Probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I just bolted, like, out of it. Just to get out of that. Scared the shit out of me. And I was definitely, like, I've had, like, odd dreams since then. Like, there was one, me and both my brothers were in this weird, like, camp house, and then all of a sudden, people turned into, like, monsters and vampires and whatnot, and it kind of turned them into, like, a Left 4 Dead, the video game kind of situation, where it's like, you know, we're taking all these motherfuckers out, and they keep coming, you know, like zombie horde kind of shit. Which ended up being fun, like we're racking up points and like, you know, kind of wild bunch kind of shit. But this one was like, I've taken this walk at least 100 times, like during the daytime and at night, like just by myself. But I was by myself in this particular dream, and then all of a sudden I hear the hum of the van. I turn back when the sliding doors clack open, and it's the clean white van. There's no advertising. There's no nothing. I don't recognize it. And these dudes just pile out and start chasing me. And that was the last one. Like, there's stuff like that that's happened. And I think I mentioned last week, like, the whole bit of, like questioning reality, like, things that have, like, deja vu and glitches in the Matrix and whatnot, where you think, like, is this really happening? Like, dreaming, for me, it's, the example is, like, dreaming, or, like, getting a snippet of something in a dream, or when you're unconscious in some sort, and then it happens. And then you have to catch yourself because you're not quite sure if it's the actual present, or something that you imagined, or something that you think you might have done before. Because I've had that at least 12.5 times that I can recall. Like, and it's, the weird thing is, like, it's lately, like the last, like, probably 3 or 4 times, it's been at work, which is the worst part, the worst place to have these things happen at.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's much easier to have it happen in a natural setting where you're by yourself or in a much more comfortable stance than it is to be at work. But last time I had it, I think I mentioned this in the last podcast episode, was I'm coming out of the back freezer at the store, grabbing some sort of product, probably fish, frozen fish. Come into the way we have it at work is that there's the main cooler that meat department shares with the deli, and then there's our prep room, and then it leads straight out to our counter floor, and then right around the corner to the actual floor of the store. I come out, and one of my coworkers who was in this little snippet of the dream is standing there talking to this old lady, and that same old lady, same fucking big wheat, I don't know if she had a wheat, looked like her natural hair. She's standing there, same kind of voice, talking about the same kind of thing. There's half a rib loin on the table, and there's blood all over the table. Hasn't been cleaned up. The bandsaw's dirty. And I just caught myself. Because I'd seen this shit before. And it hadn't happened like that in probably another 5 years. And then before that was probably another 2 or 3 years. But every once in a while that'll happen. And it makes you really, really quite, at least for a hot second, it makes you really question, like, the whole nature of things. Like, and I don't know if that's. No, it's one of those instances where, you know, you had to stop and like make sure, like, and recollect and collect yourself, and make sure that, like, okay, is this. You know, I'm not just like tripping out or whatever. Like, I didn't crack my back and get a bad acid flashback. You know, you're in the present time. You're in the here and now. You're in this or whatever. But like, I mean, you sit back and kind of like chew on those kinds of moments. You start to think like, you know, you at the least have to question, you know, the nature of the reality that you're in. I mean, I'm not saying this is all a dream or like this is coming to you from a live broadcast on fucking Nebulon 5 or whatever, but it's to me, like, stuff like that, like questions like that, like, they're healthy. They are very healthy. Like, you know, like, you know, what is reality? Like, making your own reality and, like, being in the present and the here and now and stuff like that. And then you get into, like, I guess, the physics or...
Just like a metaphysical almost.
Yeah. But if you dive too far into it, it gets, like, way more existential. Like, you know, what is the meaning of now? And... like, what is the purpose of me being here, and is this all worth it, or, you know...
I mean, sometimes there isn't meaning, but sometimes you gotta find the meaning within the meaning that isn't there.
Well, fucking, that leads to a great point. And if you want to, like, start going down that rabbit hole, I mean, by all means, just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Like, regardless of whatever rabbit hole it is. I mean... it could lead to a lot of fear and terror, but also at the same time, it could lead to a lot of excitement and enlightenment. I've been down that way, and by all means, I mean, if you want to go down that way, just know what you're getting yourself into. There's a great quote from Stanley Kubrick, the master, where I believe it was after the release of 2001, and the universal standpoint that the film takes and whatnot. And an interviewer asked him basically about his thoughts on the meaning of life and whether or not we're here for a purpose, and, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And he had this whole diatribe about, you know, essentially, life, as far as a human standpoint, kind of is meaningless. In the defining kind of definition standpoint. But there's a great quote at the end of his bit, and in the midst of it, he says that, which is really one of the most like terrifying kind of things that you can even imagine. If you want to allow your brain to be capable of it, where he says, you know, the most terrifying thing about the universe is not that it is hostile, it is that it is indifferent. It's indifferent to what happens on this planet and what we do to each other, essentially. But at the end of it, it's really very affirming within the context of what we've been talking about, like the fear and the anxiety and the horror and whatnot of what we do and go through. Where he says, and I'm quoting, "However vast the darkness, one must supply his own light." And it's really stuck with me. And it's, however far gone you want to go, you have to be the one to get yourself out of it. However deep you want to go down that rabbit hole, you have to be the one to pull yourself out. You know, if you want to consider the terror and the fear, you have to be the one to bring the happiness and joy. And with that, episode 8 of the Moon Tower Podcast is over and out. Have a good night, folks.
Peace
Happy
out.
Halloween.
Woo.